In the middle of nowhere, a woman decides to abandon her dying son. This decision was not driven by cruelty. The poor mother was unable to bear the sight of her son's suffering. Distressed, she places him under the shade of a bush and starts distancing herself, her heart breaking with each step. Consumed by grief and helplessness, she left her voice in a silent plea to the heavens, but received an unexpected answer. A few years before the desert scene, Sarah and Abraham embarked on a journey from Ur of the Chaldeans to Canaan, motivated by God's promise for Abraham to become the father of a great nation. Despite the magnitude of this promise, the couple faced a significant challenge. Sarah was barren, unable to bear children, a situation that weighed heavily on them both. As years passed, the fulfillment of God's promise seemed increasingly distant, and Sarah grappled with a growing sense of desperation and inadequacy. In her quest for a solution, Sarah turned to a practice that was not uncommon in their culture, offering her servant as a surrogate. Hagar, an Egyptian maidservant acquired during their sojourn in Egypt, became the focus of Sarah's plan. Sarah proposed that Abraham take Hagar, hoping that if Hagar bore a child, it could be considered hers, thereby fulfilling the divine promise. Abraham recognized the depth of Sarah's despair and agreed to take Hagar as his concubine, and it worked as planned. Hagar became pregnant. But what Sarah did not consider when formulating this plan was the darkness of human nature, including her own. Driven by jealousy and perhaps regret over her decision, Sarah began to treat Hagar harshly, transforming her daily existence into one of unbearable hardship. Abraham, though aware of the situation, did not intervene, saying to Sarah, "Your servant is in your hands. Do with her whatever you think best." This left Hagar feeling utterly alone and without recourse within the household, prompting her desperate escape to the desert in search of relief from her suffering and a hope for a better future for her unborn child. In the arid expanse of the desert, Hagar found herself alone and pregnant. Despair gripped her heart as she wandered, burdened by uncertainty and fear for the life she carried within her. Tired, she decided to rest by a spring of water. Suddenly, the silence of the desert was broken by a divine presence that would change the course of her life. An angel of the Lord appeared before her. The angel's voice pierced the solitude, calling her by name. "Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?" His words, both an inquiry and a gentle admonition, prompted Hagar to reveal the depth of her anguish and the reason for her flight. The angel then issued a command that must have seemed as daunting as it was unexpected. "Go back to your mistress and submit to her." The directive was not a call to return to the source of her suffering, but rather a reassurance of God's watchful presence over her and her unborn child. The angel unveiled a promise. Hagar's descendants would be too numerous to count, a blessing that echoed the covenant God had made with Abraham. The angel also revealed to Hagar that she would bear a son whose name would be Ishmael, meaning God hears. It was a divine testament to her seen and acknowledged suffering. Reassured by the divine promise, Hagar returned to Abraham's household and gave birth to a son. Following the divine command, they named him Ishmael. While this meant that Hagar's misery should have come to an end, it was actually the beginning. 13 years later, 3 divine messengers manifested as human visitors at Abraham and Sarah's tent. One of the visitors, identified by the narrative as the Lord, delivered a message that would alter the course of their lives. "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Sarah, overhearing this conversation from the tent, reacted with a mixture of disbelief and amusement. Yet the Lord, aware of Sarah's laughter and her inner thoughts, responded with a question that underscored the power behind the promise. "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" As promised, Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son. He was named Isaac, which means he laughs. But Sarah quickly realized that her son, being the second, can't be the heir and won't benefit from God's promise of being the father of a nation. Ishmael was now an obstacle, and she needed to get rid of him and of his mother. Sarah waited for the right opportunity. She observed Ishmael playing in a way that she interpreted as threatening for her son. Sarah approaches Abraham with a painful demand. Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac. This request plunges Abraham into deep distress. Ishmael is not only a child he has loved and raised for nearly 14 years, he is also his firstborn. Abraham turns to God for guidance, and the Lord reassures him, telling him to listen to Sarah because God's covenant would be established through Isaac. However, God also promises that Ishmael, being Abraham's offspring, would not be forgotten and would become a nation because of his lineage from Abraham. Amid the pre-dawn hours, Hagar and her son Ishmael were sent forth into the desolation of the wilderness. Abraham, with a heart burdened by sorrow and obedience, provided them with meager provisions, water and bread. As the wilderness of Beersheba stretched endlessly, Hagar stood as a mother determined to protect her son. However, as the sun climbed higher, their water dwindled, and Hagar started realizing the dire state Ishmael was in, dehydrated and exhausted by heat. Hagar realized that her son was not just tired, he was dying, and there was nothing she could do. Hagar faced the most agonizing decision of her life. Unable to bear the sight of her son's suffering, she placed him under the scant shade of a bush and distanced herself, her heart breaking with each step. There, consumed by grief and helplessness, she lifted her voice in a silent plea to the heavens, her tears a testament to the depth of her despair. The divine answered. An angel of the Lord called out to Hagar. "Do not be afraid," he said, "for God has heard the boy crying as he lies there." With a command to lift Ishmael up and hold him tight, the angel revealed a well of water, previously unseen, gushing forth from the dry ground. This turning point transformed Hagar's tragedy into a story of divine providence. Hagar quickly drew water from the well to revive her son. Ishmael, as we shall see in future videos, not only survived, but also grew to embody the resilience and strength of one who had faced death and been reborn through divine intervention. His legacy, as promised by the divine, would be vast, a nation unto itself, born from the trials of the wilderness. As for their relation to Abraham after the exile, there is no biblical evidence that Hagar and Ishmael ever saw Abraham again, at least not while he was alive. Upon Abraham's death, as his son Isaac was preparing to bury him in the cave of Machpelah beside Sarah, a brother showed up to assist. It was Ishmael who came back to help with the funeral.